I was about 7 or 8 years old when my family started going to this place in South Georgia. It wasn't a real lake, not naturally at least. It was man-made, basically a huge dugout pond that someone tried to turn into a family attraction. The owner had poured truckloads of beach sand around the edges, planted a few palm trees that looked out of place, and charged people to come spend the day there. Families would park their cars nearby, unload coolers, set up grills, and pretend they were at some kind of beach resort. To a kid, though, it was exciting. It smelled like sunscreen and hot dogs, and the air was always full of noise, kids laughing, adults yelling, music playing from car radios. There was a big water slide too, tall and shaky, the kind that looked fun if you didn't think too hard about it. Kids got hurt on it all the time. Scrapes, bumps, sometimes worse. Nobody ever seemed too concerned. My family always parked in the same spot, facing a small island out in the water. It wasn't much of an island, just a raised patch of sand maybe 30 yards from the shore. Kids swam out to it constantly, climbed up, rested, then jumped back in. It felt like a goal, something to prove you were brave enough. I wasn't a strong swimmer. I couldn't swim properly at all. But the water between the shore and that island was just a little deeper than my height. If I stretched up, my mouth and nose could break the surface. I figured out I could bounce, push off the bottom, rise up for air, then sink back down and push again. That's how I made it out there. The water was always cloudy, stirred up by so many people. You couldn't see your feet, even in the shallows. But that didn't bother me back then. Nothing really scared me yet. One afternoon, the sun was blazing, the sand was hot enough to burn your feet, and the water felt warm and heavy. I ran in, splashing, laughing, and started bouncing my way toward the island like I'd done before. Each time my feet hit the bottom, I felt the soft sand shift beneath me. Then, on one bounce, my foot came down on something that didn't feel like sand. It was soft, but solid. Not squishy like mud, not stringy like weeds. My toe pressed into something rounded, and I distinctly felt what seemed like a nose beneath it. Before my brain could even react, something brushed between my toes. Hair, long, fine hair, moving gently in the water, sliding between my toes like it was alive. I yanked my foot back instantly. Panic hit me all at once, sharp and overwhelming. I kicked hard and started thrashing toward the shore, not looking back, not thinking about anything except getting out of that water. My heart felt like it was trying to tear its way out of my chest. When I finally reached the shallow part, I stumbled and crawled out onto the sand. I sat there shaking, staring at the water, my feet pulled close to my body. I didn't scream. I didn't tell anyone. I was just a kid, and my mind didn't know how to understand what had just happened. I stayed on the shore for a long time after that, watching the water, feeling unsettled, trying to convince myself it was nothing. I stayed on the shore longer than I ever had before. The sun dried my skin, and grains of sand stuck to my legs, but I didn't care. I kept my eyes on the water, especially the space between the shore and that little island. Kids kept swimming back and forth like nothing was wrong. They laughed, splashed, climbed up onto the sandbar, then dove back in. Every time one of them disappeared under the surface, my stomach tightened. I tried to explain away what I had felt. I told myself it had to be weeds, or maybe a clump of roots, or even my imagination playing tricks on me. I was young, and my brain wanted safety more than truth. I wanted the world to make sense again. Then I heard the yelling. At first it blended into the usual noise of the place. Parents were always calling out to their kids, telling them not to run, not to fight, not to go too far into the water. But this voice was different. High, strained, and edged with fear. A woman was shouting a name. The same name, over and over, louder each time. People started looking around. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A man joined her, his voice deep and panicked, calling the same name, scanning the shoreline, the water, the parked cars. Other parents stood up from their chairs. Some pulled their kids closer without even knowing why. The lake felt different all of a sudden. The air was heavier. The fun drained out of the place like someone had pulled a plug. Kids were ordered out of the water. Some complained, some cried, confused about why playtime was suddenly over. Adults waded into the lake, spreading out, calling the boy's name again and again. I watched them move toward the island. My eyes locked onto that spot. One man dove under and came back up shaking his head. Another dove, then another. Each time they surfaced, the tension grew. The shouting turned sharper, more desperate. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. Then someone screamed. A group of adults gathered in one place, just in front of the island. They went under together, then came back up struggling with something between them. When they lifted it out of the water, everything went silent. It was a boy. His body was limp, his skin pale in a way that didn't look right under the sun. Water poured from his clothes as they dragged him toward the shore. His head rolled back, and his hair hung down, dark and soaked. I stared at his hair. That's when it hit me. Cold and crushing. The shape under my foot. The nose. The feeling of hair slipping between my toes. I hadn't imagined it. I felt sick. My legs felt weak. I wanted to run, to hide, to disappear, but I couldn't move. Somewhere behind me, a woman let out a scream that didn't sound human. It was raw and broken, filled with a kind of pain I'd never heard before. People crowded around the boy's body. Someone yelled for help. Someone else told everyone to move back. I don't remember seeing an ambulance, but I know it came. I know adults talked in hushed, urgent voices. I know that day was over, even though the sun was still shining. We left soon after. I don't remember getting changed. I don't remember the ride home. No one asked me why I was so quiet. No one asked what I had felt in the water. And I didn't tell anyone. Not then. I'm 47 now, and that day has never really left me. I've forgotten a lot of things from childhood, faces, names, whole years that blur together, but that moment is still sharp. I can remember the heat of the sun on my back, the cloudy water, the exact distance to that little island. Most of all, I remember the feeling. The impossible, unmistakable sensation of hair drifting between my toes. As a kid, I didn't have the words for what happened. I didn't understand death, or drowning, or how quickly a normal day could turn into something irreversible. I only knew that something was wrong, deeply wrong, and that my body had known it before my mind did. So I buried it. I never told my parents. I never told my friends. I carried it silently, like a secret I didn't ask for. Life moved on, whether I wanted it or not. I grew up. I went back to lakes, to rivers, even to the ocean. I learned to swim properly. I laughed in the water, floated on my back, let waves carry me. But there was always a line I wouldn't cross. I never stood comfortably in murky water where I couldn't see my feet. I never bounced blindly off the bottom again. Somewhere deep inside me, that child was still there, still pulling his legs up onto the shore. I sometimes wonder what happened to that place. Maybe the lake was shut down. Maybe it was filled in, erased, turned into something else. Maybe families still go there, still grill and laugh and let their kids swim, unaware of what once lay beneath the surface. Tragedies fade faster than we think, especially when they don't belong to us. I've told this story only a handful of times. When I do, people usually go quiet. Some don't know what to say. Some change the subject. I don't blame them. It's not an easy thing to carry, even secondhand. But it's real. Because even now, all these years later, if I close my eyes, I'm back there. Standing in warm water under a bright southern sun. Hearing laughter behind me. Feeling brave for just a moment. And then feeling it again. That soft resistance. The shape that shouldn't have been there. The fine hair, flowing gently between my toes. Time doesn't erase everything. Some memories don't fade. They stay with you, quietly, forever. For years after that day, I carried the memory like a shadow. It wasn't loud or demanding, but it never really left me. I never spoke of it, not to my parents, not to friends, not to anyone who might understand. It was too strange, too heavy, too incomprehensible for a child's words, and even as an adult, it often felt unspeakable. I carried it silently, tucked into the corners of my mind where it could fester and grow without being noticed. But it never faded. Even simple things would trigger it. A lake, a pond, murky water, sand beneath my feet. The sensation would creep back, almost like a memory of muscle and nerve more than mind. My body remembered what my mind tried to forget. At pools, I never strayed too far from the edge. At rivers, I kept my legs moving, my feet from resting too long on the bottom. Somewhere inside, I had learned to stay wary, to respect the unknown beneath the surface. I didn't understand it fully, but my instincts remembered the lesson with brutal clarity. Sometimes, late at night, when the world was quiet and the air thick with stillness, I could see it again. Not the screams, not the chaos of my parents' panic, not the shouting adults searching frantically across the lake. No, just the single instant. The brush of something soft beneath my foot. The smooth, drifting hair. The impossible sense that something human had been there, so close I had touched it without realizing it. I tried, over the years, to rationalize it. Perhaps it had been a piece of debris. Perhaps a tangle of roots, or weeds caught on my foot. Maybe I had imagined it. Children have vivid imaginations, after all, and I was 7, easily scared, prone to overthinking. My parents never asked. Friends never noticed. The lake eventually faded from our summers, replaced by other adventures, other outings, other stories. And slowly, I convinced myself that perhaps nothing had really happened at all. But deep down, I knew better. I sometimes thought about that boy, the one I had brushed against unknowingly. I didn't know his name. I didn't know his story. But I could picture him. A child like me, laughing one moment, frightened the next. I could see the way his hair would have floated in the water. I wondered what life would have been like if I had noticed sooner, if I had acted differently. Could a child have done anything to change the outcome? I didn't know. I still don't. Life moved on. Summers came and went. I learned to swim properly, to float, to dive, to navigate water without fear. I went to oceans, lakes, and rivers. I laughed in water. I felt the pull of tides and waves. The simple joy of floating in the sun. But the lesson never truly left me. That moment, that touch, had planted a seed in me, one that would never be uprooted. The world could seem ordinary, safe, playful, but danger and loss could lurk beneath the surface at any time, waiting for the smallest misstep, the smallest lapse in awareness. Even now, decades later, that memory exists. Not in screaming terror, but in a quiet, insistent way, a physical sensation that does not yield to time. A reminder that the world is fragile. That joy and tragedy exist side by side. That innocence can vanish in a heartbeat. I've never told anyone the details. The people I know would struggle to believe it, or worse, they would be disturbed in ways that I couldn't undo. So I carry it alone, as I always have. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I can feel it again. The water around my legs, the murkiness hiding what lies beneath, the tiny, impossible movement that my child self recognized instantly. Some truths, I have learned, do not leave you. They wait. They linger beneath your consciousness, quiet as the bottom of a lake, constant and unrelenting. And sometimes, even in moments of calm, they resurface. In subtle ways, in ways you cannot predict, reminding you that the past is not gone, and that some experiences are part of you forever. That summer, that lake, that little island, I will never forget them. And I will never forget what waited beneath the water, unseen, untouched by anyone except me, even if I didn't fully understand it at the time. Looking back now, decades later, I can see that day for what it truly was, and I understand something I couldn't as a child. It was never just about fear. It was about awareness, about the sudden, shocking way reality can intrude into a life that has, up until that moment, felt safe and predictable. That lake, the man-made, sandy, sun-baked stretch of water, looked harmless enough on the surface. To the families and children there, it was summer, laughter, barbecues, and swimming. But underneath, it was a place that taught one simple, impossible lesson: you can never fully know what lies beneath. Even now, when I try to describe it, my hands shake slightly. Not because it's terrifying anymore, though part of it is. But because the memory is alive. Sharp. Insistent. Every detail remains as vivid as the day it happened. I can remember the sun high in the sky, burning my shoulders. The smell of the lake, warm and thick, mingled with charcoal smoke from grills and sunscreen lotion that had been left in the sun too long. I can hear the laughter of children, the yells of parents calling for their own, the distant hum of cars idling in the parking lot. I can feel the heat of the sand beneath my feet as I ran into the water, my toes pressing against grains that stuck to my skin, warm and rough. And then, the water itself. Murky, moving, impossible to see through. The push and pull as I bounced toward the island. That brief, innocent confidence that I could make it there on my own. And then, the moment my foot touched something solid beneath the water. Something impossibly human. The soft, warm curve of a nose. The silky strands of hair brushing between my toes. I froze, and my heart thundered. My body knew before my mind did what had happened, and I yanked my foot away instinctively, kicking toward the shore as fast as I could. I collapsed onto the sand and sat there trembling, unable to speak. I couldn't tell anyone. I didn't understand it, and the memory didn't make sense to a child. Children don't process these things. All I knew was that something had been beneath my feet. Something real. Something that should not have been there. For years afterward, I carried the sensation in silence. I carried it like a shadow, quiet but unrelenting. I never spoke of it to anyone. The memory was too strange, too private, too terrifying in its intimacy. And yet, it never faded. Every lake, every pond, every body of water I approached afterward carried with it a subtle unease. I didn't know why I flinched sometimes, why I never let my feet rest on the bottom of murky water, why I felt the need to keep moving, to stay alert even in seemingly harmless places. My body remembered what my mind could not forget. Late at night, sometimes, when the house was silent and everything else had gone to sleep, I would see it again. Not the chaos of the adults yelling, not the terror of my parents discovering the boy, not even the screaming or panicked voices of those moments, but the sensation itself. That brush beneath my foot. That impossibly human presence in the water. That hair, drifting between my toes. The memory would return unbidden, vivid as if it were happening again. My body would tense, my heart would race, and I would feel the same shuddering fear I had felt as a child, only now tempered by reflection, by knowledge, by the life I had lived since. I tried for years to rationalize it. Perhaps it was a root, a tangle of weeds, a log, a trick of the water. Perhaps I had imagined it entirely. But I knew better. I knew the truth. The shape, the movement, the silky strands, they could not have been anything else. And the knowledge of it settled in me like a stone in my chest, permanent and unmovable. I sometimes think about the boy. I don't know his name, I don't know his story. I don't know if anyone else remembers that day the way I do. But I can picture him. A child, like me, laughing one moment, gone the next. I can imagine his hair floating in the water, the small details that no one would ever notice. I wonder what life would have been like if I had acted differently, if I had noticed sooner, if I had screamed, if I had tried to save him. But I was a child. I couldn't have done anything. And yet, even as an adult, I can't help but wonder. Life moved on. Summers came and went. I grew older. I learned to swim, to dive, to float. I traveled to oceans, lakes, and rivers. I felt the rush of waves, the cold pull of deep water, the thrill of floating in sunlight. I laughed. I splashed. I played. I did all the things children and then adults do near water. And yet, I never forgot. My feet never rested too long on the bottom of a murky lake. I never let myself drift blind in places I couldn't see. Somewhere deep inside, the child I had been, the child who touched that impossibly real thing in the water, was still present, watching, waiting, remembering. Some experiences are etched into you in a way that nothing else can undo. They shape your instincts, your perceptions, your understanding of the world. They remind you that life is fragile, that ordinary days can end in tragedy, that danger often hides behind a mask of normalcy. That lake, the little island, that boy, and the sensation of hair drifting between my toes, these things are a part of me. They live in me, quietly, persistently, demanding acknowledgement even if I never speak them aloud. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can feel it. The sun overhead, burning down on my shoulders. The warm, thick water surrounding me. The sand beneath my hands as I stumbled toward shore. The laughter in the distance. And the hair, flowing, impossibly, between my toes. I have learned to live with it. To understand that some truths do not fade. Some moments do not leave you, no matter how much time passes. They are part of your body, your nerves, your awareness. They shape your decisions, your reactions, your life. That day, that lake, that boy, and that impossible touch have been etched into me forever. It is not a curse, though sometimes it feels like one. It is a reminder, a lesson, a truth I carry silently, that life is fragile, innocence is temporary, and